So we are on the sidelines of the Pondi Lit Fest 2022, and I have with me Dr. Anand Ranganathan.
Hi Ajit. Hi.
I have Abhijit, Iyer, Mitra, and we were just reminiscing today that the first time that the Pondi Lit Fest was held in 2018, 4 years ago, this is exactly how we started things. Me interviewing the both of you. So as all of us remarked today, this is a really good omen. So let's begin with a very
except there was a difference. I was a lot fatter and resembled Abhijit 4 years ago than I do now. So
and maybe Abhijit was a lot thinner.
His frugal Indian thing hasn't really kicked off till then.
No, after that I went to jail and I truly became a frugal Indian.
So how does it feel to be back to your favorite Lit Fest?
I love this place. I just love all the people here. I love the people behind the scenes organizing it. It's just so nice. You know, when I come to Pondi, it's kind of like, I hate to use this sort of woke word, but safe space for me.
Okay.
So I really like it.
Oh, it's amazing. It's as I said, you're in the company of a lot of friends, but more than that, I think it's a festival that encourages people to freely agree and disagree. A lot of disagreements, which is the hallmark of a society that is interested in learning. So I think if I was to associate one word with PLF, it would be you take home having learnt a lot.
Okay. So last time we had a very free-flowing conversation and it went absolutely viral. People loved it. So I want to sort of maintain the same format as last time. And the broad theme that I want both of you to touch upon, because I think both of you have spoken about it extensively, is actually just from the last 4 years, the last time that we did this interview, so much has changed. For instance, even the festival has become such a big affair, so much more mainstream, and this is something that we see across the spectrum for a lot of things that we can sort of categorize as being on our side of the spectrum. A lot of the things have become much more mainstream, they've grown bigger, they've become much more popular and so on and so forth. Our side of the spectrum is definitely more dominant at a political level, and at the same time you have a lot that has not changed. You have in fact, according to a lot of people, things even becoming worse in several domains. So this is what I really want to touch upon. How much has changed in the last 4 or even in the last 8 years for that matter? What has changed and what has not changed? Let's begin with Dr. Anand Ranganathan.
Let's tackle this question from a different angle. Let me begin by asking you, how are you a patient man or an impatient man?
It depends. I think pre-COVID I was an impatient man. Post-COVID I have become a patient
man. Okay, what about you, Abhijit?
I have very little patience for fools.
Okay.
Otherwise I'm a very patient
man. So I am a very impatient man. And the reason for that is that if I believe that something is in India's interest and it doesn't harm anyone and it is based on concrete, verifiable, scientific, economic, fiscal evidence, that it must be replicated, it must go through. And if it doesn't go through, that hurts me. So I'm always looking at a glass half full, because I believe that India has always been tragically a case of missed opportunities. It makes people patient, and that is the tragedy. I don't want people to be patient. And let me go back to the, I think 60s it was, when Naipaul met R.K. Narayan at a festival, and Naipaul was very impatient. He said, look, India has so much potential, and what are you guys doing? And this is not working, that is not working. That was the time when he wrote India, an Age of Darkness. And then Narayan said something which infuriated Naipaul even more. He said, India is like a river, eternal, it keeps on flowing. You dip into it, you come out of it. Now, that's an incredibly patient way of looking at things. And I am not patient at all. So to answer your question, I would much rather look at the missed opportunities than the good things that have happened. There have been a lot of good things in the last 8 years. I can recount them, they're on the tip of my tongue. But let me again tackle this question, because it's a very important question, from another angle, which is that, let me go back, we are having 75 years Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. So this makes it even more important to recount the most important events in Indian history that shaped us, saved us from calamity, from a catastrophe. And from the top of my mind, immediately I can think of three that all of us can relate to. The first I can think of that actually saved us, was the Green Revolution at that point of time. It saved millions and millions of lives. And that was based on Burlog and his high yield variety wheat that we imported. Of course, it needed foresight of Shastri and a few other agricultural secretaries and everyone. The second was, which Abhijit can talk more on, was that we became a nuclear state. And when you become that is your deterrence. I dare say, if Ukraine had kept a few nuclear arsenals, it could not have been blackmailed and run over by, so that was important. And the third one was liberalization. That saved us millions and millions of lives. So these are the three things I can count on that happened over the last 75 years. Is there something which is equivalent or even comes closest to these three that you can think of in the last 8 years? I know it's very difficult. You got to condense something that happened in over 70 years to something equivalent that has happened in last 8 years. I can't think of anything as important as these three. I can think of things that have come very close to it. So for example, basic amenities are being provided. Now, I don't know, we already have, I hate to use the word privilege and non-privilege and all that, but the fact of the matter is, we don't need a toilet, we don't need a cylinder, we don't need all those things, we already have them.
Yeah, but there are millions
There are millions upon millions so for example, every time people cry about pothole roads, and I tweeted about it. The fact is that bad hospitals, pothole roads, and so many other things that we crave about, we don't realize that there are millions upon millions who are receiving them for the first time. A pothole road is better than no road at all. An overcrowded hospital is better than no hospital at all. So that is the story. So when you say, have things changed? Surely things have changed, things have improved. They have improved for a particular strata of the society, and I am very pleased about it. Because a capitalist state, if you want to be a welfare state, a welfare state can only run through a capitalist system. And for a capitalist system to run proficiently, you need a happier, healthier, educated workforce. How do you get it? Through welfare state. So yes, things have improved, and I am always optimistic, but I am impatient. I don't know about Abhi, but I am very impatient.
So let me take on from where Anand left off. So for us, we have gas cylinders, we have electricity and all of that. But for me, I need security from Pakistan and China. Okay. So for me, what the 1974 nuclear explosion did, that gas and electricity and toilet provision to an ordinary person is their equivalent of the first Pokhran. It affects them directly in a mental space that they needed to get filled. At the same time, let's look at the second example that Anand gave, the Green Revolution. The Green Revolution was one of those things which gave us short-term security for long-term disaster, in a sense. The Green Revolution and its children. So the Green Revolution belts, they are today the cancer belts of India. Wherever the crop yields were stabilized and increased and things like that, fertilizer usage grew, phosphate and things like that, and today there is rampant cancer out there. The crop diversity was destroyed. Today we have not even 1% or maximum 2% of the grain diversity that we had prior to that. The third thing that it did was the kids of the green revolution. So, one of the children, that the mentality of that green revolution was eucalyptus, which has destroyed, it is a water genocide.
Yes.
Okay. And to this date nobody is even planning on stopping it, even though you know the havoc that just 2 eucalyptus trees can destroy an entire water table in no time. Everybody is seeing the water tables go down, but nobody wants to take action on eucalyptus. Similarly, growing rice in Punjab, which was never a rice growing region, which is a wheat growing region, you introduce a water intensive crop out there, you have changed the entire cropping pattern, which leads to the crop burning, which is killing millions of Indians through asthma, lung cancer and whatnot every single day. What I see has not changed in the last 8 years is this jhatka policy making.
Okay.
Okay. It is a very one dimensional policy making which runs contrary to the Confucian edict. If you see a man starve and you give him a fish, you will feed him for a day, but you teach a man how to fish and he and his family will live to a ripe old age. We are giving people fish, we are not teaching them how to fish. You see that with policies. See, every policy has a immediate effect, then it has a second order effect and a third order effect, and you translate into this into policy. You look at 5-year terms, you look at 10-year terms, which is 10 to 15 year, which is medium, and long term, which is never more than 30 years.
Okay.
In policy making, you never prognosticate for 80, 100 years, it is never beyond 30 years. What I see happen in India is we have a lot of things which are meant to yield in the short term, and when they do not yield in the short term, like for example, Make in India. Have you seen the Make in India lion in the last 4 or 5 years?
No.
No. Have you seen any Make in India ads in the last 4 or 5 years? What happened to it? It then becomes a long term plan, and in India, this what Anand said about the river flowing, when you fail, you extrapolate it to the next 1000 years. India is the only country that makes policy for the next 1000 years to compensate for failure. When is it going to happen? Tomorrow, tomorrow. You know that song from that famous line, Annie, that famous line from that song, Annie, no? Tomorrow, tomorrow, it's always a day away. So here it's tomorrow, tomorrow, it's always 1000 years away. This I am seeing very regularly with policy. I am also seeing a toxicity of policy where we are returning to a lot of the bad paradigms of the past, namely over empowering bureaucrats who have been known choke points for everything in this country, where they are being given powers to harass and intimidate, which we have not seen since Indira Gandhi's time. So, in a lot of ways, have there been good things that have happened? Sure. Ujjwala, the insurance for the medical insurance for the poor,
Ayushman.
the electrification, the rural toilets. But I never look at policy in terms of 5 years. I prefer to look at it in the 10 to 15 year to 30 year bracket. And my question always is, who's going to pay for all of this? Where is the growth to pay for all of this? Because if you are going to run a system with the kind of shambolic regulatory mechanisms, the shambolic judicial mechanisms, the shambolic business mechanisms and extortionist tax mechanisms and extortionist rentier bureaucrat mechanisms, you are never going to be able to achieve the growth. See, in order to distribute pizza slices to people, you either need to bake more pizzas or increase the size of the pizza.
Yeah.
The problem is the pizza size is increasing from a 8-inch pizza to a 9-inch pizza to a 10-inch pizza, but you are not having 8, 9 and 10 kids every year, you are having 10 kids the first year, 20 kids the second year, 30 kids the third year. There is a fundamental imbalance between the distribution and the revenue streams, and that worries me.
The reason I phrased it in terms of 8 years obviously is because of the political aspect of it all. And here what I am trying to understand is at a political level or at the level of narrative or discourse, or really what we want out of politics, are we better off or not? In the sense that today we have for the first time probably after independence really the common man, so to say, who has actually taken power over there, probably for the first time, and you have a complete paradigm shift in the way politics is conducted in the country, and and we are seeing that sort of translate into the kind of narrative and discourse as well, because for the first time a lot of these people, we used to complain a lot about the fact that it's the same old people there who are actually the Lutyens and the Khan Market Brigade who are actually still there. They are controlling the narrative, they are controlling the media. But then finally, after so many years, what we see is that the main sort of how do I put it, the people who are like at the center of it, whom we used to complain a lot about, are today probably running YouTube channels of their own and that kind of thing, while the mainstream media is increasingly looking at the country in a more positive way, not sort of being blatantly elitist or anti-India and that kind of a thing. So at a political level, are we better off?
Sorry.
Yeah, take it. Yeah.
Look, we are losing the international narrative battle. Okay. And we are losing it, and how? I don't think there is any country I have visited in the last 8 years where I have not been asked a question about the ongoing genocide of minorities in India, or the Brahminical genocide being perpetrated on the lower castes, completely clueless about the fact that the Prime Minister is an OBC and the President was an SC and is now an ST.
I'm sorry, when you do this, it reminds me of that international man of mystery, Austin Powers.
Domestically, what I'm seeing is, like we saw in the Rafale debate, there is a lot of information being put out, but there is not enough contextualization, reasoning, or context being put out. So at best, I would say, if you see the number of channels that are portraying India in a more positive way, what is the impact it is actually having? I would say minimal. I would say minimal for one very simple reason, that numbers is not quality.
No, of course not.
There is a certain quantity of channels putting out positive news, shorn of context, shorn of meta narratives, shorn of things like that. And there is a much smaller, much more vicious, venomous and potent lobby which puts out the venom, whose venom gets amplified manifold. And the problem with this is, it may not affect the electorate. It's very good for the BJP's electoral prospects to have this kind of a system, but it is not good for India to have this kind of a system. So we are at a crossroads where what is good for the BJP's electoral prospects is not good for India's economic prospects, and what is good for India's economic prospects is not necessarily good for the BJP's electoral prospects. That is a very dangerous dichotomy, because this takes us back to the Nehru-Gandhi period, where you had to artificially create this siege mentality, in order to justify your failures or non-performance, as the case may be. It does not even need to be that.
Siege mentality meaning? Could you please elaborate?
Siege mentality. Indira Gandhi, for example, used to see the foreign hand in everything.
Okay.
Okay. Today, it isn't the foreign hand. It is generally, oh, anti-nationals did this, corruption is doing this, etc., etc. Fine. What are you doing about corruption? Okay. What are you doing about anti-nationals? You have a fellow who was sent to jail for inciting riots that killed 10-12 people over the last 2 months. But inciting riots is held by the Supreme Court to be free journalism. Because it is journalistic to paint targets on people's heads and have them killed. This is what journalism in India is about. This is the Supreme Court's definition of journalism. And the moment that person comes back on Twitter, they start acting as an overground agent for Kashmiri terrorists, saying that 4 or 5 Kashmiri children were in jail with me, who were jailed for Facebook posts, and it turns out there were no underage anything in Tihar jail, Kashmiri at that time. And there were also proven overground workers.
The one this person was jailed with.
Exactly. Now, I understand you win elections, but I think Nehru and Indira Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi also won spectacular election victories. Your winning elections is not a validation of policy. Good policy can sometimes lose you elections. Vajpayee, fantastic, he lost the election. Narasimha Rao, fantastic, lost the election. India punishes those who try to help it. India celebrates those who destroy it.
Anand?
Yeah, no, I think let me go, in order to answer this question, let me go back to what Abhijit said initially. I think he made a very important statement when he talked about Green Revolution, which I put as one of the top 3 events that shaped us and actually saved millions upon millions of lives. And what he said was that has now become a poison. Okay, that has become a curse. And he's right. Now, you see, the tragedy is, and this is where when he talked about policies, if they don't work and if we shirk away from whatever responsibility is, we say, "Arey, wo to 1000 saal ke liye hai." Now, let's take the example of Green Revolution. Why is it poison now? Because of pesticide use, because of water guzzling crops, because of so many, tens of reasons. Now, I've always believed that in science, more often than not, formulas are eternal in the sense that they will last the test of time, but the things that are based on those formulas are not. They have to adapt because things mutate. Now, when was let me take a contemporary example. How long do you want your phones to last? You're going to change your phones after every 2-3 years, your laptops after every 4 years if you're lucky. 4 years is a long time. Phones 2 years, watches, everything is made to last in a very limited way. Same goes with science and the experiments that are conducted and the results of the experiment. They are not, Green Revolution was made to last for 20 years or something until we could tide over this catastrophic situation that we weren't able to feed our own people. Green Revolution is not made to sustain for more than 15-20 years. In our case, it is continuing to last for more than 50 years now. That is the reason why we are failed, a failed nation. Let me be very brutal about it, because we refuse to adapt. Science adapts. I gave you the examples of phones, of computers, everything, even nuclear explosions. Now of course we passed that because of political character, but every year Western nations used to hold nuclear explosions, sometimes underwater, which was an absolute crime. How many millions of species they killed. But the fact is, you need improvement, you need those parameters on which you have to judge even your scientific experiments. We didn't do that. The next stage from Green Revolution, call it Green Revolution 2.0, was the genetically modified food, which we are languishing behind even developing world. Bangladesh is ahead of us. So many things, golden rice, I don't need to go into that. The point is, we are so unsure of our place in the world, what to do with successful experiments. We are not picking them up, we are continuing with the unsuccessful ones. He gave the example of eucalyptus, absolutely right. I can give you tens of examples. Sugar cane, for example, we are the world's second largest producer of sugar cane. We produce 350 billion kilograms of sugar cane. Sugar cane requires 7% of the arable land, but 72% of the irrigation water. The amount of water that India requires to produce 350 billion kilograms of sugar cane is equivalent to 1 quadrillion liters, which is the amount of water there is present in 10 Ganga Sagar dams. And the sugar prices have halved in the last 5 years. But we are, in fact, today this government has increased the cost or the MSP equivalent to sugar cane by 350 rupees per quintal. We continue, we revel in doing unsuccessful experiments. So obviously, and let me be very honest, I have everything, our social strata has everything, things have improved, right? We have nothing to complain about, to be honest. When people say 2 liter, 2 rupees बढ़ गया liter पे, come on, when was the last time you talk about, I mean, this is the society that goes and spends on the weekend 2,000 rupees on a pizza or whatever. I mean, I'm just trying to put ourselves in a picture here. Why should I be impatient? I'm impatient because I want my country to prosper. I want those people for whom the policies are meant to protect and make them prosper, we are shirking away from them. The farm bills would have catapulted us into a middle income economy in 15 years. Now it has taken us back by 15 years.
Yes.
Now when you have a government with a majority, when you have those almost verbatim those 3 farm bills in the manifestos of all the opposition parties, still you cannot pass it. It tells you something is wrong with us.
Yes.
Now is it wrong at a political level or at a psychological level? That is for others to decide, but I think it may be wrong at the political level because maybe Modi just wants to keep on winning elections, but sooner or later you have to decide what is good for you and what is bad for you. And let me also be very brutally honest, if people feel that liberalization was brought about, of course it changed us in health, in education, in all those parameters, but if it was brought about by Indian politicians, you cannot be more wrong. Yes, you had the people who brought it to fruition, Manmohan Singh, Narasimha Rao, but who was the one who actually forced us to do it? It was IMF and the World Bank in America. Let's be honest about it. We never would have had the guts to take those decisions.
So actually that's a good segue for my next question, which actually is about a point that you raised. Shall we? So you actually made this point, Abhijit, about how at the international level there are these terrible misconceptions currently about India and how we have failed completely in terms of the narrative at the international level. Now there is another way to look at this, which is that we are doing something right for that to happen. What do you think about that? Because I often feel that whenever, let's say, a publication like the BBC is being critical of India, we are definitely on the right track. What do you think about that?
See, the BBC was terribly critical of India for the last 70 years. That doesn't make Nehru or Indira Gandhi's policies very good. The Washington Post.
Actually, I think BBC is a bad example because they are racist.
But even the Washington Post and New York Times never had anything good to say about India in the last 70 years.
By the way, did you know that Indira Gandhi banned the BBC for 2 years before the emergency?
Oh,
yeah,
that's
BBC.
A nice story, actually.
Yeah.
So even the Washington Post and New York Times go back to what they ever wrote good about India.
But isn't the
See, a validation. The West does not like you. Okay. That doesn't mean your policies are great. a policy's greatness cannot be judged in the absence, either in the criticism of or absence of criticism from an external factor. A policy is an internal locus that develops based on internal need, and the problem here is, like Anand said, we do not learn from our own mistakes. If you remember when Shaheen Bagh started, remember Shaheen Bagh is a continuum. Everybody only says Shaheen Bagh because they don't want you to remember it started with the Trans Yamuna riots, which metamorphosed into the Jamia Millia riots, which then metamorphosed into Shaheen Bagh to create a human shield around the rioters, which culminated in the Delhi riots, and ultimately it was COVID that ended it, not the government that ended it.
Exactly.
Now, from day one I have been saying this, if you do not control rioters right in the beginning, it just grows, it empowers them and they become bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
If the government was serious about the farm laws, why did they repeat the exact same pattern all over again with the farm rioters, allowing them to inconvenience the public? Look at how Canada dealt with the truckers. There were 100 different ways. So, you are not just incompetent at policy making, you are incompetent, and this is a allegedly strong on security government. God save us from strength in security like this. I would honestly, I would prefer an editor of the New York Times to be in charge of our security than the klutzes who ran this entire management campaign. Like I said, we have gotten to the point where the interests of the country are diametrically divergent to the electoral interests of the BJP at the moment. And mind you, it was Punjabi farmers. All the other farmers across India wanted this.
No, I need to come in here because this point needs to be emphasized. And here can I say that if we have those so-called 4 pillars of democracy, all of them failed spectacularly. And I think, I don't know, there is a fit case for us to have in India as a class action suit. People who are shortchanged should be able to sue the asses of the people who they vote to, make these policy changes. If you can have in this country retrospective tax, you should have a proactive suing of the government, because later on it turned out that 86% of the farmers were for the farm laws.
Yeah.
And how dare the Supreme Court say, where are those who are pro? You mean to say that a poor farmer who is tilling his field in Andhra Pradesh or in Kerala or something has to leave? He is making wealth, producing wealth, produce for India. He has to leave all that, come on to the streets like those arhatiyas, intermediaries and middlemen were, because they have no work.
Yeah,
and protest in front of Supreme Court.
Somebody
Doesn't,
why should they protest?
Yes.
And mind you, the whole problem in all of this was that the Supreme Court sat on the report that was given to it.
Blatant.
It commissioned a report and it sat on it.
Crazy, crazy.
I have never seen a more disgraceful abdication of responsibility than that.
Are we seeing a lot of that?
But we see it across the board. It's not just the judiciary, it's also the government.
And the Supreme Court can do that. But is it not incumbent upon, when we can criticize the Supreme Court? You've seen in the last week, 10 days, our law minister is shirking away from even tuchha criticism, small say, look, no, we are Indian government will not criticize whatever the judicial thing is. Kyo bhai? Who is suffered at the end? Is Kiran Rijiju a farmer? Is Modi a farmer? Farmers suffered. They were promised through these 3 farm laws that their income will triple, quadruple or whatever. They will be able to sell their produce like we are able to sell our produce to a private concern. They will be able to sell their produce at a non-government mandi, contract farming. These are the things that we as businessmen or other people, non-farming businessmen, take for granted. When 86% of farmers are denied this, now remember, 44% of our active labor force of 515 million people are in the agricultural sector.
Yes.
44%. In the West, it is 2 or 3%. We are the most inflexible labor force in the world. And what is the share of GDP of the agricultural sector? 12.5 to 13%.
Yeah.
When we as citizens can see this, how come a 2-time elected majority government cannot see this, that this is in the Indian interest?
Mind you, in the last 8 years, the number of people employed in agriculture had gone down under the UPA.
Yes.
It has now gone up spectacularly by what, 10 to 15 percentage points under the government, which is basically a mask for seasonal unemployment.
If you see the Manrega funds, government has increased it. Same Modi ji was saying, गड्ढे खोदने के लिए तुमने स्कीम बनाई थी, अब उसी स्कीम को आप ज्यादा फंड कर रहे हो, इसका क्या मतलब है? Things are not right. But the point is, it is upon us to point that out. I am never ever going to shirk away from the responsibility, no matter if I am trolled or abused or whatever it may be. It is my job, because you were elected to do this. And none of these schemes are going to help me. I will be very honest about it. All of us are in a zone which is unaffected by dollar exchange rate going up by 50 paisa or inflation shooting up by 2%. Let's be honest. This guy has a BMW. I have a Maruti 800. We are not affected by it. No, okay, no, I don't have a Maruti. But
I had a BMW. I don't have it anymore. Anyway.
Louis Vuitton bag like Mahua Mohatra.
No.
You don't?
I don't. It's a horrible bag. Only tasteless yuppies will buy it who
Thing
need
is,
social
why are we impatient then?
Yeah.
That itself should tell you that all of us are, I think myself as an Indian, I don't think of myself as someone who's earning reasonably well, who is wealthy or what. No. I am impatient not because things are not reaching me, they are. I'm buying those things. I am impatient because 800 to 1 billion Indians are not able to taste the fruits that they voted a government to taste the fruits for. I am impatient because 21% of our annual budget allocation goes in propping up 1800 public sector units. 400 of them are non-functional. That is why I am impatient. We took the Air India today, didn't we?
To be fair, they have at least started privatization.
One example, Air India.
Of course,
In
the
8
Tatas
years.
aren't running it. In fact, I felt the government of India ran it better than the Tatas having flown Air India today. They've destroyed it the way Vistara is also destroyed. I mean, Vistara is a trashy airline to fly today. It was amazing when it started off. Air India, I could not, before under the government, the in-flight entertainment would not work. Today on my flight under the Tatas, the in-flight entertainment during landing literally fell on my lap. The screen fell on my lap. Okay. This plane was smelling like a fish market. You are a Bengali like me, so you know what a fish market smells like. That at least they had money under the government to spray deodorant. Today they don't, under the Tatas, ancient business house of India, they don't even have money, which is fine. I am glad it is out of, I do not have to pay to maintain this white elephant anymore. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you, Modi ji, for doing that. Okay. But do you remember the slogan, na khaunga, na khane dunga? What is the single biggest line of theft today? I am not talking about subsidizing inefficiency. Direct theft. Do you know what the single highest direct theft in India today is?
No.
Power theft.
Okay.
16 to 20 billion dollars every year.
Wow.
16 to 20 billion with a B, not with an M, with a B. That is enough. About $4 billion is the cost of an Areva 2000 megawatt nuclear reactor. Every year, India is losing the ability to pay for 4 to 5 2000 megawatt reactors every year that would add to installed capacity. We were all told, look at what Modi did in Gujarat. He brought in this model which minimized power theft. It made power more expensive, but people were willing to pay. You are willing to absorb $20 billion in theft every year. Where is na khaunga na khane dunga? When it suits your electorate, आप भी खाओगे और दूसरों को भी खिलाओगे, खाने दूंगा नहीं, लेके खिला रहे हैं आप.
और इसका मैं एक और एग्जांपल दूंगा. You see, corruption, okay, on the face, I genuinely believe Modi is not corrupt. There is no, like the Gandhi,
he is not.
But can I please ask, as a general question, as an audience, what is corruption? अगर आप उसका आंसर ढूंढोगे तो yes, Modi is corrupt. Because why is it in this country, in a spectacularly loss-making, non-profit or unprofitable organization like BSNL, okay, has been propped up by 1.5 lakh crores just a week ago, 10 days ago? Where is the protest? Why aren't people demanding from Mr. Modi that in 2013 he said a government has no business to be in business, and now he's propping up something which is spectacularly loss making? Is that not corruption? I say it is corruption.
I don't say it's corruption, I say it is incompetence. I think we misinterpret incompetence. Anand, I think, misinterprets it as corruption, and the left misinterpret it as malignancy. I just see him for what he is, a moderately competent person who's achieved the Peter principle, whose spectacular incompetence shines when he puts his hand to
somebody
it.
Made a very interesting observation that the way communism sort of takes hold of a country, and those who are at the helm of it say that it's never worked, but this time it will work.
Yes,
Yes.
always, my God.
And that is what has
always.
happened probably with measures like this one, where that a PSU, if you prop it up, it's not going to work.
It's
But
not.
then somewhere they believe that we have found a formula,
Yeah.
and this time it will work.
And this was the case with Air India. For decades upon decades upon decades, every year there were losses, concrete losses, but they kept on saying, let me pour some money, let me buy new aircraft. Did you know Air India had the youngest fleet amongst all
Yes.
airlines? The most pathetically run organization has the youngest fleet. Why? Because it was people were pouring in money in the hope that we would. So likewise it is with BSNL. Why do you need BSNL? And this kind of excuse which people make, that otherwise ye dur daraz gaon mein nahi jayega. What are you talking about? People in villages don't care two hoots about BSNL, that is a third-rate provider of whatever. They'd much rather go for Jio or Vodafone or whatever. Point is, you are giving choice. It is not a monopoly. And somebody has to be responsible for that. I mean, I can't believe that these things so let me put it, Abhijit is more unkind to Modi than I am. I'll be honest, because मेरी expectation एकदम they've like dived. Okay. इसकी तो मरीना ट्रेंच में चली गई.
I say incompetent.
Okay.
I think corruption is worse than
The
incompetence.
point I'm making is, sooner or later we have to reconcile that the image of Modi is much more grander than what he has delivered. According to me, I am reconciled that this is a cylinder toilet sarkar, and I'm not saying it in a disparaging way at all. We need this, but this government is going to fulfill the needs of its population, not its aspirations. It is not going to make them hugely rich, it is going to make them survive. Thrive and survive में जो difference होता है ना, वो अब मुझे पता चल गया. मोदी जी survive करवा रहे हैं, thrive नहीं कर रहे.
It is a subsistence government, and batti cylinder, what is it?
Electricity, toilet.
Batti cylinder toilet is the new roti kapda makan.
Yeah.
Okay,
Fair enough.
Sabka Saath Sabka Vishwas is the new Garibi Hatao. We've gone back. If you look at that movie, what was that Tom Cruise movie where they keep replaying the whole alien invasion again till they win it? एक Tom Cruise repeat in time or stitch in time, पता नहीं, repeater or whatever था. It is like that. I get these bad images of Nehru and his industrial policy resolutions of 1957, of Indira Gandhi and her roti kapda makan, of Indira Gandhi and her garibi hatao.
But वही है ना अभिजीत, कंप्लेंट कोई नहीं कर रहा है.
No.
कौन कर रहा है?
Indians
नीति आयोग
don't
कभी
complain.
कंप्लेन कर रही है? In any sensible civilized society, if the government was spending 20% of its budget on sick PSUs, if the government was allocating 1.5 lakh crores to a sick telephony unit, it would have caused an outrage amongst the policy makers. People would have resigned, saying, I can no longer be part of this charade. Exactly the opposite is happening. And people don't realize, I am for a welfare state, I've already said it. I want my people to get all these benefits. But things are so connected. How are you going to have money to provide for all this welfare if you don't earn that money? And how do you earn that money? Through reforms. And which sectors do you need reforms in? In the agricultural sector, in the defense sector, in financial sector. In every sector you need reforms. You are not doing those reforms. Ultimately, this is a cash cow that's going to run out of cash.
Since he brought up defense, let's take defense. Defense is something you can island. So normally in a democracy like India, see, China could always say, because they're a dictatorship, they could say East Coast will develop first and then slowly we will pass the things on. Today you can't say Tamil Nadu and Punjab will develop first and slowly Maharashtra and Bihar will have to wait your turn. You cannot say that in a democracy. You'll be booted out. Fine, I accept that. But if you say defense sector will develop first and island it, create the free business environment for it and things like that, it would do well. It is something that everybody will accept. Tell me, what greater self-reliance have you achieved in defense in the last 8 years? What have you indigenized in defense in the last? I've seen huge policy statements. Your advisor on science to the government is a man who is notorious even within the DRDO for not having delivered a single project. He is notorious within the DRDO for not having delivered a single project. How is this any better than Nehru making General Kaul the commander in China? So this is the problem we keep coming back to.
And if I can just add to that, Abhijit, just a couple of minutes. The point with, this feel goodness, if I can call it that. Now, you must be seeing to hoist a flag or to unfurl a flag and to display a flag from every household. Abhi wo chal raha hai, sabne apne DP badal diye. So there is a small film, I don't know, maybe a government, Doordarshan has made it. In Kerala, a girl wants to sell it. And she's selling a flag for 10 rupees. People are saying, no, it's only 5 rupees. And then she says, look, China ka nahi hai, ye India ka hai. So this is Atmanirbhar. So basically the thing is, flag mein bhi Atmanirbhar aa gaya. Piche China has been made into a villain ki Chinese cheez mat kharido. Do you know what has happened in the last 1 year? After Galwan, after what China did to us, Chinese imports have been the largest ever in our history. It used to be 70 billion or 80 billion, it's 120 billion last year. How do you explain this, yaar? मतलब इसके पीछे किसी का जॉब क्यों नहीं गया, कोई आंसरेबल क्यों नहीं है, मेरी ये समझ में नहीं आता. अभी मैं कह रहा हूँ, ये जो लोग घिसते पिटते रहते हैं ना कि ऑपोजिशन क्रिटिसाइज कर रहे हैं, ऑपोजिशन मारो गोली, दे आर ब्लडी द मोस्ट एजेंडा ड्रिवन प्रोपेगेंडिस्ट. It is left to us to criticize. And I challenge anyone watching this in the last 1 hour of this program. Is there anything that we have said that is not based on fact? Open challenge है. हम ही लोग, we are the ones reduced to criticizing. जितनी गालियां देने हमें, तो कांग्रेस वगैरह क्या आज तक कहा है किसी ने? वो तो MOU साइन कर चुके हैं चाइना से. वो क्यों कहेंगे कि 120 बिलियन डॉलर्स का हमारा चाइनीज ट्रेड इंपोर्ट हो रहा है? बट somebody is responsible for it. If you are crying, from the top of your house, we need Atmanirbharta and government report. I think Niti Aayog has said that 87% of the goods that we source from China can be sourced quote unquote cheaper from third country. In 2020 this report came. 2 साल में साला import आपका $30 billion ज़्यादा हो गया.
And this when Chinese mobile phone manufacturers have been caught siphoning off funds.
वो अभी भागे हैं वो.
And what have you done? Nothing.
I think this is a good note to end on because
I thought we were just beginning. अभी तो लोहा गर्म हो रहा था, शुरू हुआ था यार. और बाकी we leave it for the PLF.
अरे हमको बहुत गालियां पड़ने वाली.
I know. पर आप देखो वो है.
I'll tell you why I think it's a good note to end on and why what you just brought up is very important. And that is because I feel that the adversaries or the critics of this government should be people who have the country's best interests at heart. I mean, that's the most legit critique or opposition that the government should have.
But see,
I'll tell you one thing.
He brought up the MOU that the Congress signed with the Chinese Communist Party. I am convinced that the INC has signed an MOU with the BJP to provide the most ineffective, useless opposition around, that when there are 100 pressing issues, the best issue that these clowns can think of is India is not a union of states. It is, it was so stupid. Something.
Yeah.
There is no opposition, and even if the opposition criticizes on something, they are so hypocritical that the easiest thing to do is to rebut their thing. Like, I mean, Trinamool, on what basis will it, corner BJP on corruption right now? Yeah. When they are talking of poverty, the woman has a Louis Vuitton bag and then hides it. Now, I am not against her having a Louis Vuitton. The problem is she hid it. So that shows her hypocrisy. So, and this is the tragedy. The greatest criticism, I say mock and ridicule every ism except criticism.
Yeah.
People have to understand this, because we have no opposition. The opposition has to be very rational, very logical, has to keep on asking the questions until it corners the government. But we are doing it. Opposition is not doing it.
Absolutely.
And the people, and I bet you tomorrow this lad, he joins the government, he will stop criticizing. Problem ye hai,
which is why I will never be invited.
Which is why you will never be. You name one person in the government, one person in economics, from science, from everything, who has ever been critical of a government policy. मेरी समझ में नहीं आता है कि लोग गवर्नमेंट ज्वाइन करते हैं तो क्या समझते हैं कि भाई झूठ बोलना शुरू कर दो या चुप हो जाओ. क्यों? जब आपकी वो कौन सा दोहा है, निंदक नारे राखिए. मोदी ने खुद नहीं कहा, ही हैज हिमसेल्फ सेड कि जो आपको क्रिटिसाइज करते हैं उनको अपने पास रखो. आई डोंट नो हाउ द होल वर्स गोज. निंदक नारे राखिए, कीप द वन हु इज क्रिटिसाइजिंग यू क्लोजेस्ट टू यू. व्हेन द पीएम हिमसेल्फ इज सेइंग दिस, बाकी सारे लगे हुए हैं अपना भजन मंडली में. दिस हैज टू स्टॉप. I think you are going to say we have to stop, but I don't know.
No, but the problem constantly is that I have on several occasions gotten calls saying you can't criticize. Okay, it's delete it, change this thing, change the argument. They are so scared of criticism. You look at the posse of incompetence that has gathered around. I'm not saying I'm more competent.
At the political level,
but
they are happy with the opposition's criticism because that works.
Yeah, that's why I said
this is what
they are able to
MOU,
answer
there is
it.
an MOU between the INC and the BJP. True journalism would be discovering
why
a
should
copy
you
of
be
that.
scared of criticism if you can rebut it?
Yeah.
If it is puerile, if it is childish, tell me why. But I challenge the government or a government representative to come and sit with us. अगले 3 दिन हम यहाँ पे हैं, एक को बुला लो, एक आंसर हमें कर दें जो हमने सवाल पूछे, एक आंसर. तो वही कह रहा हूँ यार, जब आपके सामने ये चल रहा है तो वही है ना. R.K. Narayan was absolutely right. Either you be frustrated or you be patient. You choose.
So, the last time that we sat down, actually
we were a lot less pessimistic 4 years ago.
Less pessimistic, but even then, a lot of the policy makers did watch that video, and it did give them a lot of food for thought. So I hope that this time also the same thing happens, and that this gives them some food for thought.
गालियाँ पड़ने वाली.
अरे food for thought is galis, boss. The only thing they think is XYZ. I'm not going to use the abbreviations on a civilized program like this, but XYZ for him ending with CCCCC, and XYZ for me also ending with GGGGG.
But you are XX or XY? That's not certain.
That's uncertain. But I don't see change.
Yeah.
I see a certain thick-skinnedness where everything is driven by electoral gain. And if coincidentally maybe 1% is in the national interest, it is done.
Yeah.
I suspect it is mostly a capacity deficit.
No, sorry. I totally disagree with that.
So this is where I have a more positive view of the government than Anand does.
No, I'm saying it is not capacity deficit because I am being more positive. I know India has the capacity. I mean, we We produced
But does
2
the
billion
government-
vaccine doses.
Does
2
the government
billion.
have the capacity?
Yes, the government has the capacity.
No, intellectual capacity.
अब now you are उसको वो सब उसमें जा रहे हो, सब function तो उसमें obviously intellectual capacity I am not one to answer that, but the fact of the matter is all those doofers who were saying वो जाकारांड या क्या भी नाम है उसका जैकफ्रूट न्यूजीलैंड प्राइम मिनिस्टर कि मोदी को हटाओ उसको लाओ वैक्सीनेट करो, न्यूजीलैंड की अभी तक पूरी पॉपुलेशन वैक्सीनेटेड नहीं है, हमने 2 बार कर दिया वैक्सीनेट. सो वी हैव द कैपेसिटी, वी हैव द स्किल, वी हैव एवरीथिंग, वी हैव द लीडर्स ऑल्सो. यार मोदी डिड वंडर्स इन गुजरात. पता नहीं क्या हो गया यार यहाँ पे, समझ में नहीं आ रहा मुझे.
I think we've given a lot of people a lot of food for thought. So yeah, let's end it on this note. Thanks a lot.
Real
Dr.
pleasure.
Ranganathan. Thank you,
pleasure.
Abhijit, Iyer, Mitra. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.